morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to Season 4 and episode number 471 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Cryo Media Network. Yeah.
Crier Media.
Today, recording day, is Tuesday, September 17th, 2024, and it is going to be a pretty nice day here at the Beaver Lodge. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver pronouns, he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Of course, a big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. I think you all know what the main subject of the discussion is going to be today.
Yeah, it should be
hardly a mystery. But before we do that, Mr. Grizzly, how's your mental health today? And we would have discussed the effects of power lines on cows grazing in fields in Montana, were it not for those pesky kids who decided to have a by-election.
I don't even know what that means.
Try to Scooby-Doo it.
I know, but Montana?
Trying to weave in the Bring It Home video.
Oh, okay.
Except the cows were grazing in California. Sorry.
There was a bit of a reach on that one there. So I see what you were trying to do.
I was making it up as I went along. I didn't quite stick the landing.
It happens, you know. Mental health-wise. Yesterday was not a great day. I don't know why. It just out of the blue. I had no energy to do anything. I tried to sit down and do some edits. Couldn't do it. I had nothing in the tank. I don't know why. It just, sometimes that's just what happens. And yesterday was one of those days. So, yeah. Hopefully today will be a better day. I certainly hope so anyway. We'll see. But at the moment, I think I'm okay.
All right.
I don't hate myself right now, so I think that's a good step.
It's a very good step. Right. Good morning to you, Kit Linda M, Kit Mr. Jim, Kit T. Wigmore, Kit Elaine. Thank you for joining us. Kit Vim, it's so lovely to see you. Kit PNC Bio. What is he doing now? It's Canada's full of immigrants. It's a miracle we have any pets left. Oh my God. Jeez. I'm gonna say hello to the kids first. I'm gonna get the Kid Dan. Hello, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Kit Jen, Kit Cassie, hello, lovelies. Thank you so much for stopping in. Kit Lori, hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I think Lori is joining us from the U.S. if I'm not mistaken. Also, Kit Cassie told me about some Saskatchewan moms that she had told about our show and who are probably listening in. So good morning to you.
Good
Thank
morning.
you so much for joining us. Or good afternoon if you're listening later.
Yeah, whenever
Um,
you're listening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're taking
yes.
part.
Kit
Good day, good
Carol.
afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Yes. Kit Carol. Good morning, Nona. Lovely to see you there. And Kit Mike H. and Kit Mademoiselle Fox coming in right at the last second to get herself a hello. Um, all right. Well, um, yeah.
Yeah.
You were going to get me to say, you said something that had provoked something, a thought of mine, and now I forgot it because I didn't want to interrupt the hellos. Oh, well.
That's
I
what
guess it
happens
wasn't
when you get
important.
older. You get distracted very easily and you lose your thought process.
Yes.
Get knocked off the rail.
So, Kits and Cubs, by election night. Um, really no surprises in some ways and some tiny surprises that way. Basically, the results allow pretty much any party to say whatever it is that they want in terms of spinning them. Um, for the second by-election in a row, I went to bed with a Liberal leading or tied, because when I went to bed last night, the Liberal candidate and the Bloc Quebecois candidate were tied, and wake up to find out that they lost a squeaker. So for the Liberals,
246 votes was the difference, I think.
exactly. Yeah, and in Toronto, St. Paul, it was like fewer than 2%. So, I mean, you can spin this anyway. You can spin this as the Liberals were the big loser last night because they lost their seat, but I mean, it was such a slim margin. And they didn't lose it to the Conservatives or the NDP, but they lost it to the Bloc, which is typically the protest vote in Quebec, and it's only the second Bloc seat currently in Montreal on the island. It's not a typical result for that riding to go Bloc.
No.
But on the other hand, if you're thinking about the big game, Yves-François Blanchet pretty much is on the record as saying, Pierre Poilievre, if you want a carbon tax election, Skippy air quotes, yeah, you're not going to get our help here in Quebec with that.
No, clearly.
On an election, you're going to have to do a little better than give me one, I want one because of the carbon tax. So
Wasn't there
you need to stop being lazy.
Doesn't Quebec have their own plan like British Columbia does?
Well, they don't have the federal backstop because they're in the carbon market with California and the one that Ontario used to be in before Doug Ford pulled Ontarians out of it and decided to impose a carbon tax on Ontarians.
Well, the
that
amount
now
of
he
people
claims he doesn't like.
The amount of people I see online who are raging about, I don't get anything back from the carbon tax here in British Columbia. Well, it's not a federal program there. Skippy. It's a provincial thing, and it's been going on there for years.
Yep.
It's got nothing to do with the federal government. So take your anger elsewhere.
Yep. So as Kid Vim points out, Yves-François Blanchet hates PP, has no love for him whatsoever, and basically said, listen, if you're going to come into Quebec and say that, you need me to help, you need me, the Bloc Quebecois of all parties to take down the government on an issue related to the environment, when here in Quebec we're all in, you can keep on knocking, but you can't come in. Can keep on knocking, but you can't come in. So, yeah, Mr. Blanchet is not going to answer that. So PP can stomp his little foot and get all mad all he wants and say, I want a carbon tax election now. Give me one. Well, he ain't going to get one because he needs the Bloc and the NDP to vote with him to take down the government. And Blanchet said, well, you need to make a better case than that if you want an election. So, the Bloc Quebecois technically is the big winner of the night.
Yes.
By taking that seat. And it was very close. There was at one point in the night where the top three parties, the Liberals, the Bloc, and the NDP, were all within 6 votes of each other. 6. And throughout the night, the lead changed. The NDP was leading early in the evening. And then it was the Bloc and back and forth, and then the Liberals were leading, and so it was a very close race. So the Bloc could be the big winner. The NDP won Elmwood Transcona, but it looks like in Elmwood Transcona, strategic voting was definitely a thing.
Looks like it.
because the Liberal vote really dropped in order to push the NDP candidate forward ahead of the Conservatives.
And didn't both of the by-elections have 90 candidates on the ballot? 90?
No,
just the
just
one.
the Montreal one.
Okay, sorry.
Yep, just the Montreal one. Like I said, it's the same group that does this. A lot of the people from the longest ballot that had run in Toronto also ran in Montreal. So it seems to be a group that whenever there's a by-election, they all register and whatnot as a candidate, whether they live there or not. All that
Is that
kind of
even
stuff.
possible? Shouldn't you have to live in the riding? I mean, I think you should.
I don't.
Personally.
Yes, but I don't think it's an obligation.
Well, clearly not, because didn't Jugmeat get elected in what, Burnaby when
Burnaby.
he's from Toronto?
Yeah, exactly, the Hamilton area or something.
Yeah.
So here we have Elmwood Transcona, and you can see that the Liberal vote dropped to 1,360. In the last, I went to look in the last federal election, they had picked up over 10% of the vote. They didn't pick up over 10% of the vote here. So it looks like there was a lot of Liberal vote that went to the New Democratic Party in order to defeat the Conservatives here.
In that riding, who was the MP prior to the election?
Daniel Blakey, who had left to go work with Wab Canoe.
Oh, Daniel Blakey, NDP, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So the NDP retains the seat.
Yes.
Again, probably through some strategic voting. The Conservative got more votes in the by-election than the Conservative candidate got in the actual election. And this is with like a turnout of 39.8%. So the Conservatives really did mobilize their vote there. But fortunately, it seems that there were enough Liberals that were okay to vote NDP this time around to get the block. So in that case, you can spin it as a big loss for the Conservatives because they were really, really, really sending the message that they were going to win there. But in another way, given that this candidate got more votes, you can also qualify it as, we didn't win it, but we did very well. We're certainly not in the dumpster. So there's no real, and then the Liberals, they can turn around and say, wow, you guys didn't even get 10%. Yeah, but that's because there was a strategic voting effort. So you can't really consider that a big loss as well. In the other one, LaSalle, Émard, Verdun, you can see how close it was here. Mr. Grizzly puts it up. So Louis-Philippe Sauvé from the Bloc won it, again, just over 200 votes. So he had 8,884. The Liberals had 8,636, and the New Democrats had 8,262. So there again, you could say it's a big loss for the New Democrats because they were really spinning it like they were going to win it. Well, I mean, they only lost by fewer than 700 votes.
That's a very tight race. That's every vote counts. Remember that, because look at this. The winner, it's 200 and something, 264 votes.
258 votes.
Oh, 258. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't have my glasses on. I can't see.
Yeah. Something like that. So again, you can say that the NDP thought they had a chance to win. They certainly didn't underperform. So it's not a loss. The Liberals lost the seat, but it's not like they got annihilated. But then if you look at the vote share from the election, the vote share really dropped. So so that's what I mean. It's like in this one, because the results, the way that they fell, you can really pick any narrative you want and you could support it somehow.
Oh, yes. Well, and you look at the numbers between Liberal and NDP, and if you combine that, you're, more than 53% of the vote went to two progressive parties.
Oh, yeah. And the Bloq is the Bloq's a progressive party too.
It is. Actually, it is. It's just not a federal party. Well,
yeah.
Anyway.
It's not. Yeah. It still is a federal party, but it is not a national. But they only run candidates in one province. But but they're an issue party, right?
Correct. But you're right. They are a progressive party. That is not up for debate. They are a progressive party. Just some of their politics don't necessarily align with my progressive style of thinking.
Exactly.
That's fine. That's fine. They have the party. People voted them in. They were elected. They will ascend to power, and we'll see what they do.
Yeah. So, I mean, LaSalle Villemar didn't stay in the Liberal column, but it certainly didn't go in the Conservatives with the Bloc winner, right? So, and again, you could even spin this as a big lost night for Poilievre, right? He's got a 20-something lead in the polls, 17-point lead or 22-point, depending on the poll that you lead, I guess, and couldn't win in 1 or 2 by-elections. Couldn't get it done in Winnipeg. And if you look at the numbers in LaSalle Villemar and Verdun, while the candidates for the Bloc, the Liberals, and the Democratic Party all got over 8,000, the Conservative candidate got 3,676, which is a lot. But if you add the votes of the 4 parties together, it's literally nowhere. There was over 24,000 votes, 25,000 votes for the other 3 parties, and this guy didn't even crack 4,000. So, yeah, whatever storyline that people had going into this is a storyline that they can have coming out. So you're going to get Trudeau resign ones, but Trudeau said he's not going anywhere. And again, by losing by this narrow a margin, he could make the case that, come on. It's a by-election. It's still a protest vote. It's still a year out from the election. If we're going to do it at the regular date, we're still in the kick the tires phase. We're still in the phase where you can vote against the party in a by-election and, it'd be a smarten up, get your shit together message, and not more than that. And it could also, oh my God, it's such a devastating loss. They lost 2 strongholds in a row. That's it. You got to resign now. Put a fork in him. He's done. Literally, both narratives work with these numbers. So I would really tune out the analysis, to be totally honest, because whatever analysis you're going to get, you have to consider the source, and nothing in these numbers is definitive. But yes, it is not a great night for the Liberals, because having not won that seat, even if it was by fewer than 300 votes, does create the permission structure for everybody that was bashing down on you and punching down on you to just keep on doing that. So, and that's what they're going to do, because that's been the mission for the last 2 years, it seems. And it seems to be rather coordinated as well. So, oddly enough, my prediction that results from Elmwood Transcona would come in earlier, even though the polls closed a little later, did come true. But Elections Canada, to their credit, said they had learned some things from the Toronto one, and it wasn't that much longer before results started coming in from LaSalle Villemar, Verdun. And even though the final tally probably came in at around 4 in the morning or something, again, I watched the broadcast, and CBC went off the air, the broadcast over YouTube at midnight.
Right.
And even though Elmwood wasn't signed, sealed, and delivered, it looked pretty solid that it was a win. The NDP candidate had actually even delivered what sounded like what was being interpreted as a victory speech before the broadcast went out. But I went to bed around 2 a.m. and there were still 40 of the 190 something polls left to report in LaSalle Villemar, and it was tied.
Polls. How big is that riding? Like, what's the population of it? That's a lot of polls, man.
I would. Yeah, it's a lot of them.
For
Well, there were
a by-election
191
like
in Elmwood
crazy.
Transcona.
Really?
Polling, yeah.
I had no idea. Wow.
Well, it's not 191 polling stations, like actual places where you
okay.
go vote, right? Like in each
That's what I
polling
understood.
station, there are sometimes 6 stations where people can, based on the population. So each box, I think, is each place
station.
where you have a thing where you go and vote privately.
Okay.
So if there's 6 of them, I think each one of them might be an individual
Single.
poll.
Right. Okay. That would make more sense, because I'm like, 191? Wow, that's like, I thought 191 places to go to vote. No, I can understand 191 ballot boxes is effectively what it is, correct?
I would assume, or if not ballot boxes, actual stations, because in LaSalle Villemar of Verdun, because the ballot was like 1.36 meters long, probably took more boxes. So there's probably a lot of boxes per station. But I'm guessing, but I would have to double check on that. But I believe it's every partition that you go behind. So if you go to your polling station and you see 8 of them, each one of them is a poll, regardless of the number of boxes it takes.
So all of the, here's the question about all of these. There's 92 candidates on the ballot. Are they all independent?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now I want to know: are these real people, and if so, what is their political affiliation? Because something tells me, and I'm merely speculating this, but something tells me they're right leaning. Something tells me they might have some rubles in their bank account.
It is possible. The longest ballot move seems to be more of a left move because it's very pro-proportional representation. That's why they're doing it, because they want a different voting system. But again, just as the case with the protests, if you throw a protest, a protest to, have better supports for people living on disability supports, you can expect some people with some other causes to show up and try to make, right? So it could be a thing where, the protest vote comes in and say, hey, we want that. And then other people that want to screw things up, people on the right to join them. But again, a lot of these people seem to all have the same registrar.
Yeah, it's all very curious.
So it would create the impression for me that it was probably more a movement of the more militant left, but there's no way to know unless somebody went and actually, had interviews with all of these people,
And
media
they'd all
interviews,
need to be
and ask them
discussed.
how they feel.
I just think, look, maybe it's just some emotion coming out of me here, but look, as an independent MP, you can get almost nothing done. Like you have no party to support you. So you're going to be a backbencher. You won't be in caucus. You're ineffective. You know what you are? You're 19 years of Pierre Poilievre's political career.
Yeah. Really.
And nobody doing nothing in the background.
Yeah.
Literally, you're taking a paycheck, but you're not doing anything as an independent.
Yeah. And now, like when you're looking at all these independent candidates, the highest vote total one got was 197. Now, I don't know if that was an actual legitimate independent candidate, right, or part of this moment, because it doesn't say which ones are longest ballot. They're just all listed as independent. And then the next highest had 78, and the next 49. And then after that, either no affiliation or independence, it's like 39 votes and down. All the way down. And for the second time in Canadian history, there's been a by-election where there's been an election where somebody got no votes. Because that happened in Toronto St. Paul. There was one candidate who ran on the longest ballot that didn't even get one vote. I guess they didn't show up to even vote for themselves. Well, this time we have two that got 0 votes among these candidates. Now, if you add all the votes together that went to these independent total, I think in Toronto St. Paul, it didn't make a difference, but in this one, it would have made a difference. So if they did, but then again, maybe these people wouldn't have voted at all. Otherwise, because they're protesting the first past the post system. So if they're not running in this way as a protest vote, then maybe they wouldn't legitimize it. Or maybe they would have picked a candidate as their protest vote and all voted there together or something, or all decided to spoil their ballots to send a message or something. But it's not necessarily so that given the objectives of this movement and its reason for being, that the people that voted for these candidates would have voted for anyone else had their protest movement not been on the ballot. So it's easy to look at those numbers and say, oh, if they didn't run, then, those votes maybe could have gone to the Liberals and the Liberals would have won, or to whatever, or the NDP. There's just no way of knowing that. And anybody who speculates that is just, they're pulling on your leg, right? And they're peeing on it, because there's just no way to know. It would take somebody to go in and actually do the journalistic job of interviewing all these candidates as they were serious candidates and finding out all about their positions and whatnot to kind of figure that out. So there you go. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. So yeah, it's kind of weird to sit there because this is the big news and everybody's waiting about it. And the big news is, well, who has won? And then other than that, there is no news because, as I mentioned before, whatever spin you want to put on this, whatever spin you want to put on this.
Well,
There's an avenue for you to do that.
Yeah, and here's the, spin it any way you want. And this is what I'm hearing and reading a lot online right now. I think that the Conservatives not winning is a big slap for Pierre Poilievre.
He doesn't have the narrative he doesn't have the full narrative that he wants. The narrative that PP wanted going in is we won Elmwood-Transcota. Jagmeet Singh's sellout didn't work for him.
Mhm.
Ha ha. And look at that. The Liberals lost. Ha ha. I'm inevitable.
You're
I guess
not.
you gotta vote for me. Whether you like me or you don't like me, even if you hate me, you gotta vote for me. I'm your only option. Right? The Trump style thing. I guess that's what PP was going for. He's going to try and do that, but he can't really. He didn't win. With the huge lead that he had in the polls nationally, he didn't win.
Well, when only 63% of Canadians surveyed know who he is when they see his photo.
Yeah. But
which is astonishing to me, because this is a man who has been gallivanting 214 rallies this past summer.
Yep.
Immediately after he dumped on the Prime Minister for traveling.
Yep. For his job.
And these rallies he's attending, not part of his job, by the way. It's not, because there is no election.
Yep.
He's been campaigning for 2 years. There is no election. No writ has been dropped. I would like to see him censured for this. It's not going to happen, obviously, because we don't seem to have any sort of backbone right now. And nobody seems to want to hold him to account. But that might have something to do with the ongoing investigation into Russian media influence. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? He doesn't have his UNSACOP clearance. So maybe Jagmeet, Justin and Elizabeth May, along with Yves-François Blanchet, know something we don't.
It is quite possible. Now,
that's mere speculation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, here's the thing. It's when PP, the narrative with Pierre Poilievre, if you're looking at polls, is that the party is more popular than he is.
Mm-hmm.
That usually means that people are parking their votes with the Conservatives in a protest way. I guess waiting to see whether or not the Liberals will smarten up or something. Usually that means that. Now our world of politics is completely topsy-turvy and extremely polarized, so who knows what that means now. But in normal political conventions, right, that's what that means. Now, Pierre didn't win in Elmwood-Transcona, but here's the other thing that I want to point out here. Mr. Weasley, if you put this up.
Well,
according to
we got to change our language a little bit here. And it's because we're about informing Canadians. Pierre can't win in any of these because he's not actually running in them. His party didn't win. Well, no, we have to be, I know it's pedantic, but we have to be pedantic because we need people to understand you do not run for the position of Prime Minister in this country. You don't. We don't elect a Prime Minister, we elect a Parliament. And this is part of our civics lessons. It's important. Pierre Poilievre wanted to say, we won, I won. You didn't win anything, even if you did.
Yes. I mean, win as a party leader.
As a party leader, yes.
Now, if you look at the popular vote production, the Conservatives are running 24% in Quebec. But their candidate only picked up 11.6% in this by-election.
Interesting. Again, you know my feelings on polling. There's almost 42 million people in Canada. And I saw a poll a couple of weeks ago. 100 people surveyed, and 86% of them want Trudeau gone. 86% of Canadians want. 100 people were polled. There's 42 million of us. Come on.
That wasn't a serious poll.
It clearly not.
Not with a sample size that small.
No.
And then, of course, like I said, the Liberals lost by 0.8% in this electoral district.
We're not 42 million, 41,746,235.
Rounded up to 42. 42. So here, the point here is that regardless of what the Conservatives are going to do, because you know that PP is going to flip the chessboard and start around like a pigeon and claim that he won. He didn't win anything.
No.
He didn't win his big gamble in Manitoba, even though the vote share is good and they did make a good effort, but he didn't win there. And the Liberals did not fall apart in Quebec. And it's not like he got a boost in Quebec either.
Oh, goodness, no.
His candidate severely underperformed in this race. So there's no real win for him there. The Bloc Quebecois Creek has a big victory. The NDP saved a seat that it had, that, there was a risk he could turn around and say, hey, my strategic decisions to move away from the Liberals is what did it at the last second. Yay me. There's no evidence of that. Given how much the Liberal vote, it really just looks more like strategic voting. Canadians in that electoral district said, oh, hell no. They thought of a candidate giving the Conservatives another seat. And you have to understand that Manitoba is quite happy with its NDP premier at the moment. And they had enough of their provincial Conservatives big time. So maybe they just didn't want to go back there again that soon.
Possible.
So... And then again, like I mentioned, for the Liberals, yeah, they lost, but one was by strategic voting, and they were nowhere in Transcona to begin with. And this one was like a squeaker, and they lost to a candidate that is probably still going to be on the Liberal side when it comes to not giving what the Conservatives want, an early election. So how bad a loss is it, really?
True.
And then for the NDP, well, he saved his seat, and while he didn't win, and LaSalle Émard, his candidate did really, really, really well. So again, I would just say tune out the analysis. Literally tune out all the punditry on this one, because it's literally choose your own adventure here. It really is. And to be totally honest, that's pretty much all I have to say about what happened there, because if there was something I could run with and say, oh my God, but I have to be completely honest with you. I just do. There's nothing I can say.
No.
Because I could make a case for any one of the parties as being the winner and the loser.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, easily. Very easily.
Well, except for the Conservatives.
Yeah.
Like I said, except for the Bloc. Bloc, clear winner, Conservative, clear loser in this sense.
Yeah, we've discussed in the past how we believe that there are good people within the Conservative Party that are progressive and want to gain a seat to try and change things. I do know for a fact that that is the case, because in the last federal election, in my riding, the Conservative candidate in my riding, which he's never going to get elected here, okay? It's just not going to happen. But he's a friend of a friend, and he's a good man, and he's a progressive. I'm like, you're fighting an uphill battle in this riding. He goes, yeah, he knows he's not going to win, but he might be able to help, get his voice out there to let people know that there are actual progressives still within the party. Unfortunately, you're being silenced by regressives. And look what happened to Aaron O'Toole by trying to bring it more to the center. They gave him the boot. So unfortunately, if you are a progressive in that party, as evidenced by Michael Chong and as evidenced by Scott Aitchison, eventually they come around to Pierre Poilievre's way of speaking and thinking, which is unfortunate because they are, for the most part, I think, decent human beings. But, they've gone down the rabbit hole of Lord knows what. In the result, they seem to have sold out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a larger strategy at play here. I don't know. I'm not an insider. But the way I see people going, the way I see members of parliament, some of them who were personal friends, have just literally gone down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and hate. And it's unfortunate. But again, it's not the Conservative Party of Canada. It's not the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. It's the Reform Party with a different name. That's all it is.
Indeed. Just some little tidbits about them. It seems that Jagmeet Singh had been in Montreal about 10 times during the course of the campaign in order to stump for his candidate. Didn't get the result he wanted, but good result. And in Winnipeg 5 times since the beginning of the by-election. Premier Wab Kinew has campaigned for the candidate in Winnipeg, so it doesn't seem that there's the same thing going on as in Alberta, where the Alberta NDP doesn't want to be seen with Jagmeet anywhere, anytime, anyplace. It seems that Premier Kinew did come out and lend a hand, and it seems that Mr. Kinew has also been campaigning for the NDP in British Columbia. been showing up a couple of times, lending us star power there. So there you go. Just a couple of little things there. I wish I had more exciting news or more exciting take.
Well, I've got a
But I
couple of
don't.
different things here we can look at. Let's first pivot slightly to Karina Gould
Mm-hmm.
and her smackdown yesterday. I'm going to show you the first clip. It's 2 minutes and 1 second, and she's rising in the ranks, and people are digging what she's saying. Now, some people hate her with a passion because, oh, maybe her surname has a little bit to do with it. You think? You know what kind of people those are.
Mm.
What I heard yesterday from Mr. Poilievre was so over the top, so irresponsible, so immature, and something that only a fraudster would do. When he is focused on having an election on the carbon price, what he's trying to do is distract Canadians from his real agenda. When he talks about the fact that, he cares about how Canadians are feeling in difficult economic times, what plan does he put forward? When it comes to our seniors, the only thing that we've heard is that he wants to raise the age of retirement, cut pensions, and remove their access to dental care. When it comes to families who are struggling, what are his plans? Get rid of affordable childcare and scrap the school food program? When it comes to making sure that Canadians have access to good quality information in a time of incredible disinformation, what does he propose to do? Defund the CBC. And all of you as journalists can have experienced firsthand how he treats people who try to ask him tough questions, who try to have him face the scrutiny of what he puts forward. And how does he react? As a bully, as someone who will not stand to scrutiny, who will not respond respectfully, not just to you as journalists, but on the questions you're asking on behalf of Canadians, because your job is to get that information to Canadians. And there's a reason why he doesn't want Canadians to know what his true agenda is. And it's because he knows that they won't like it if they find out. And so what we are here today as Liberals in this House going to do, and what we're going to be doing moving forward, is to make sure that we stand up every single day for Canadians, that we push back on his bullying tactics, that we push back on his irresponsible and immature antics in this place. We have an important role to do as parliamentarians, and that is to work hard for Canadians.
So I have a couple of comments there. First off, I love her.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's badass, everything she just said and did. And here's the other thing. If you didn't notice, I think over the summer, Liberal members of Parliament were watching the news, listening to podcasts, following Twitter, going to some of these rallies to find out what's going on. And I think they're beginning to push back. They're fighting fire with fire now. And they're pissed. That's just my personal humble opinion, but it certainly looks like it, because the Prime Minister, Karina Gould, we're about to start hearing from more Liberal members of Parliament who are just said, no, we're tired of this shit. They're not going to take it anymore, and they're pushing back. The election is over a year away. Unless there's a non-confidence vote, the election is over a year away. And I think the party is just, okay, we've had it. They've started to pay attention to what's actually going on. Maybe they have been all along, but I think with the House back in session, they're kind of like, okay, we're not going to tolerate it anymore. You know, the nice, polite, tolerant Canadian. Okay, we are tolerant, but when you start to show us intolerance, we will not tolerate that. And I think that is where it's going. I could be wrong, but I do believe that to be the case, as evidenced by this next clip. Now you have two people in this, and just watch.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, Crime is up, time's up. Just last week, we heard 1 million people in Ontario were accessing food banks. Meanwhile, the NDP leader supports the Prime Minister, keeps him in power, and supports his crushing carbon tax increases. I just finished a successful by-election campaign. Why will the NDP Liberals not let Canadians decide about the carbon tax and call a carbon tax election now?
Now compare and contrast. He got up, he said his thing. You didn't hear any heckling, no shouting, nothing. Watch this.
Right.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome my new colleague to this place. It's important, of course, to always be open and transparent with Canadians, and what we see is someone else who knows how to repeat three-word slogans as opposed to be able to deliver for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, what the members opposite are doing are trying to evade what they actually plan to deliver for Canadians. So I hope that the member opposite can be more honest and transparent with Canadians moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's a good hope.
The Honourable.
Stark difference between the two, right?
Yeah, indeed. I'm glad the kids mentioned it first here in the chat. But again, we wondered about it on a by-election night. And again, I saw Mr. Stewart now just get up in the House to deliver that little thing. And again, my first question is this guy sober?
Well, it's concerning. It's concerning because perhaps he has a
I
problem.
guess I'm wondering if it's just a speech thing that he has.
Is it a speech thing? I don't know.
Because I haven't seen him enough. But
neither have I to make that judgment call. So that's why I'm not saying he's right. I'm not going to go down there and say the words. I'm not going to make the accusation. I will ask the question: is he sober, or is it a speech issue? I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know.
Don't know. That's what I mean. But I saw the clip, and on Twitter I was gonna write, is he sober? And then I thought better of it. Because I thought, you know what, this is the second, I've only seen him twice on camera.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second time I see this. Maybe it is a speech thing.
Maybe.
So I didn't, I guess, and I wasn't going to mention it. And then it's like the first thing that pops up in the chat is like, is he drunk?
Well, and that was the commentary I saw yesterday. Like, is he drunk? And it's very concerning. I don't know. I don't know what the case is. Maybe he has a problem with alcohol. I don't know. Maybe it's a speech thing. I don't know. Maybe he has mild CP. I don't know. So, for all we know, he could have MS. We don't know. We don't know. So I don't want to make an accusation. I will ask that question, though. And that's a good one, too. Is it nerves? He could be just nervous. We don't know. Maybe he has extreme anxiety. We don't know. So I don't want to make the accusation, but I will ask that question. Is he sober?
Indeed. Now, what you are mentioning, Mr. Grizzly, it does seem that there is a move by the Liberals to go on the attack. There's this ad that came out yesterday, and you'll see that there's a bit of a tonal shift.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there really is. I think they're on the attack. And yes, you do fight fire with water, but maybe they're bringing in a water bomber for this one because, wow.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is calling on NDP leader Jagmeet Singh to scrap his agreement with Justin Trudeau's Liberals.
Break the costly coalition with Trudeau.
And so I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement with Justin Trudeau. But I have ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. I notified the Prime Minister that I have ripped up the supply and confidence agreement. We have ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. The agreement is done. We've ripped it up. Well, we've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. That speaks for itself. I've ripped up the agreement. So we decided to rip up the agreement. And now it really sets up the question for the next election.
Conservative leader.
So for those listening at home that don't have the visuals, it's basically when you're hearing Jagmeet Singh repeatedly say we ripped up the agreement, because he said it many times in his press availability. The ad had something like, climate protection, and then you would see the screen get ripped in half. As Jagmeet Singh said, he ripped up the agreement, and at the end, there's a photo of Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh sort of, not holding hands like you're walking down the street holding hands, but, it's like, hey, we're making like a pact, sort of holding hands, looking at each other, both very approvingly and smiling at each other and seeming to enjoy each other's company. So basically, the whole Liberal-Tory, same old story. The Liberals are basically doing Dipper-Tory, same old story strategy. But they really seem to be ripping into Jagmeet Singh, and there's more stuff they're having. There's clips from a radio interview that the Prime Minister has done that are also being playing there. And one of them, he seems to concentrate on Jagmeet Singh, and in another one, he's talking about more about bringing people together, and talking a little bit about the Legault government and how the Legault government seems to want to protect French by making Anglophones feel smaller. So he knows where his vote bases are, and he's basically starting to mine them here. Now, there's another thing that I would like to show you, kits and cubs, and we're going to spend a little more time on it, and it's the Green Party here. Because Elizabeth May and Mike Morris had their sort of first day of school press conference to outline the Green Party's priorities. And I want to play this for you for two reasons. I want to play the opening part prior to opening it up for questions, because the question and answer session is absolutely fantastic, because, Elizabeth May, she'll tell it to you like it is, right?
You want to go right from the very beginning?
Right from the beginning. Now, the reason I want to show you the first bit is because I want to show you that there is such thing as responsibly delivered opposition that does not insult your intelligence, that doesn't need to be overdramatic and hyperbolic, that doesn't need to make ridiculous accusations or pull things out of people's butts, that opposition can be done effectively, because she raises a lot of good points, and so does Mike Morris. And they deliver it rather calmly and respectfully. And I was just listening to this, and it was sort of like, what a freaking refreshing change. And again, I still do not understand why she is not everywhere. But here we go. Enjoy this. For those who like peace, order, good government, this is for you.
Indeed.
Good morning. So aujourd'hui, bienvenue. It's like first day back at school. It's actually, believe it or not, good to be back. Je m'appelle Elizabeth May, chef du Parti Vert du Canada, avec moi mon collègue et autre député vert, Mike Morris, l'honorable député de Kitchener Centre. We wanted to highlight the things that we'll be pursuing in the fall session of Parliament. There are many. I'll briefly set out a couple, pass it over to Mike, and then we're open for any questions you may have. Nous sommes disponibles pour les questions en anglais ou en français. Climate. We've had another summer of loss of property, devastating forest fires, heat domes, flooding. It's become, I hate to say it's almost expected that we look at summer and think, oh, here comes forest fire season, here comes smoke. We're not prepared. It's draining provincial budgets, British Columbia in particular, the amount of money spent, billions of dollars of repairs to infrastructure ongoing from the atmospheric rivers of fall 2021. We want to see action on climate. This Friday, some of the amendments that I'll be putting forward at third reading on Bill C-33 to accelerate the moment that we follow through on a Liberal campaign promise to ban the export of thermal coal. These are amendments I'll be bringing forward to Bill C-33. Bill C-33 is a bill I really want to see all the way through the House and the Senate before an election. It's a bill that was put forward when the Minister of Transportation was Omar Al-Gabra. It's been around for a while. It deals with rail safety and restrictions on the powers of port authorities that are a big issue in my community and in my riding. We also want to see action on climate to deal with the excess profits that the oil and gas industry is receiving. I also want to stay on top of the implementation of my private member's bill that was signed into law with royal assent June 20th of this year, which is to see a really robust plan for achieving environmental justice. I will also continue to track the work of the Hogue Commission and my own work as one of the only, well, I shouldn't say one of the only leaders, the only leader who doesn't want to get top secret security clearances, apparently Mr. Poilievre, but having had access to it, I will continue pursuing the issue of foreign interference in the Parliament and, as ever, pursuing any opportunity to get proportional representation, fair voting, back on the agenda before whenever the next election may be. And now over to Mike.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Wonderful to see you all. For my part, spent most of the summer knocking on doors in my community, knocked on over 4,500 doors, and across the board, it continues to be the case that the rising cost of living and the unaffordability of day-to-day life continues to be top of mind for so many folks in my community and across the country. We need to continue to address the housing crisis that we're in if we're going to be honest about addressing affordability. As Greens, we're going to continue to call for predictable, ongoing investments in deeply affordable housing, as well as the actions that need to be taken to prevent pension funds and real estate investment trusts and other large corporate investors from buying up housing and raising rents on regular folks. In my community in particular, temporary residents, the rise, this federal government has not been watching the numbers. In our community, a local college has raised the number of international students from 700 to over 31,000. The federal government was asleep at the switch. Over the past year, we worked with the Minister of Immigration to put a number of measures in place. I'll be continuing to advocate for reasonable measures that ensure we prevent the exploitation of international students, but also ensure that the numbers are more in line with community infrastructure from housing to healthcare to employment. You heard Elizabeth mention Motion 92. As Greens, we're going to continue to call. If we're going to be honest about addressing affordability, we need to address the gouging that oil and gas companies are doing. They're making record-breaking profits on the backs of regular Canadians. It is so disappointing that we haven't seen a windfall tax placed on the oil and gas industry the way this government already did on life insurance and banks in the midst of the pandemic. If we did so, we could raise $4.2 billion, every dollar of which could go back into making life more affordable for folks across the country. We could be improving service and reducing fares on public transit, for example. We could be helping Canadians retrofit their homes and getting heat pumps installed across the country. As Greens, we're going to also continue to call for the government to follow through on promises made in recent years. That includes promises made to communities like mine to build two-way, all-day GO train service from Kitchener to Toronto. My community's been promised that for over 10 years. We don't even have a date for completion yet. This government should be calling for accountability from provinces and territories to follow through on important community promises like that one. I'm going to be continuing to advocate for funding for the arts. Elizabeth and I both have been working across party lines in recent months to ensure there's better geographic distribution of funds. Communities like mine are getting $3 a person, while others are getting upwards of $21 a person. It adds up to a $9 million shortfall, and artists and creatives and arts organizations in my communities and others are hurting as a result. We need to see fair distribution. Finally, no doubt, Greens are going to continue to call for the federal government to fix the Canada Disability Benefit. They promised and they raised the hopes of folks with disabilities across the country when they promised the supplement that would lift hundreds of thousands of working age folks with disabilities above the poverty line. They disappointed the disability community with their announcement from the budget back in the spring. As Greens, we're going to continue to call for this government simply to follow through on what they promised and fix the Canada Disability Benefit. I'll pass it back to Elizabeth now for any questions. Merci.
So there you go, kids and cubs. And as Kit Dan said on the chat before Mike Morris started speaking, Mike Morris is one of the biggest supporters of PWD issues. And there we go. So I wanted to present that to you because no flights of fancy, no yelling, no screaming, no attacking journalists, no they're
Threats.
eating the dogs and eating the cats, or it's
None
going
of
to be
that.
nuclear winter. It's
Opposition the way opposition is meant to be done.
And look at all the issues they raised.
Yes.
GO train service, people with disabilities,
Well, the
climate.
Eglinton Crosstown, which has been under construction for 10 years, and there's no, like, I mean, come on, 10 years? What are you tunneling it with, a spoon? Come on.
Right?
Like,
So-
seriously.
Seriously. Talking about the constituency work that they've done, reporting back to constituents and Canadians about what they've been doing with their time, where their priorities are going to be, what they have planned. Yesterday I saw a clip from a Conservative MP saying like this, yeah, well, this is the time where we keep the cards close to our chest. Of course, they would love us to release our policy right now, but we're not going to do that. No, you're not going to do that because you don't have one. And two, you don't want to do that because if we knew you were honest about what your plans were, nobody would vote for you. But whereas you have the Conservatives treating us like you're not entitled to know what it is that we plan to do to you rather than for you until 36 days before you vote. Here are the Greens. Like, yeah, here are our plans. Here's our agenda. Here are our priorities. If you ask Pierre, our priorities are to axe the tax, fix the budget, stop the crime, and whatever, and we get insult Jagmeet Singh until he gives us the carbon tax election we want. That's literally their plan. That's literally their priorities. That's all they've got for you. You see, the Greens, they point out a problem and they actually point out some avenues for solution. You never get that with Pierre. Or I shouldn't say never, but you very rarely get that with Pierre. So let's keep on, Mr. Grizzly. I think Ms. May is going to talk a little bit about some constituency work that she did, and then she's going to finish off, and then they're going to open up to take questions. And I want you to listen to the question and answer session again, how they behave. And Miss May, as she did in her opening statement, casually drops a few bombs.
Well, a little passive aggressiveness, maybe.
A little. Well, I mean, again, she has no love for either Jagmeet because he literally defamed her left, right, and center in a few elections. And she has no love for Pierre, obviously, because, I mean, if she doesn't vote for the Liberals because they supported the pipeline, she's not going to vote for Pierre because, well, he's not in at all. So, she, yes, Miss May is not the type to be bombastic. She's the type to just speak calmly and then just drop a little something somewhere along the way.
Here we go.
Because there's a British Columbia election as well, I've been knocking on a lot of doors too, and I just finished a round of 9 community meetings in Saanich Gulf Islands. It's not a big geographical region when you look at it on a map, but I've got 5 small islands where transportation is difficult to get to meetings with their MP, and so I hold 5 meetings on each of the islands in my riding and 4 locations on the peninsula. I never meet with constituents that we don't hear the top of mind issues you've just heard from Mike as well. Healthcare crisis, housing inaccessibility, inaffordability, and the Canada Disability Benefit questions across Canada that we hear no matter where we are, because I've also been campaigning this summer in Winnipeg and Montreal. People want to see that their government works for them, and we are committed as Greens to have this Parliament work for Canadians. And with that, we're open to any questions you may have.
Good morning. How does your party plan to approach non-confidence votes this sitting?
One at a time. So we have not voted confidence in this government. We've not voted confidence in budgets, which are the true measurement of confidence in a government, ever since the Liberals bought the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And then it's not, to use the word waste is an understatement, but to spend $34,000 million. I sometimes say it like that because I think billion just goes over people's head like another variation of million. But 34,000 million hits home. $34 billion to build the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is still opposed by sovereign First Nations governments along the route, opposed by my constituents, opposed by British Columbians, opposed by the government of Washington State. It's a dangerous project that the government backed fully with public dollars. So we haven't, as Greens, voted confidence in Trudeau's administration ever since that happened. Monsieur Poilievre and this current round of, I sometimes find it Shakespearean, you know, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. You have to be able to count, and there's the Bloc seats plus the Liberal seats, or in another iteration with a different vote, it could be the NDP votes with the Liberal votes. Mr. Poilievre doesn't get an election just because he has a slogan that rhymes. It doesn't add up to a responsible decision. So we might, find ourselves voting non-confidence. But before we commit to what we're going to do with Mr. Poilievre's motion, we have to read it.
And based on what you heard from Canadians over the summer, do you think that there should be a federal election this fall?
No. I'll tell you why. What I hear from Canadians is that they don't like stupidity. They don't like partisan politics for the sake of being hyper-partisan. It was under Stephen Harper that I think it was viewed universally as a good thing for Canadian democracy to have a fixed election date, to reduce the game playing around we're going to call a snap election, we've decided we want it. We know that governments and politicians look at the polls and decide this is our chance. John Horgan did it in BC. It's across party lines. He was NDP. Doug Ford does it in Ontario. Okay. But the fixed election date was put in place in order to provide certainty for things that really matter, like getting through a legislative agenda. The first prime minister to bring in the fixed election date was also the first prime minister to break it when Stephen Harper ignored his fixed election date for the 2008 election. We would like to see work done before throwing Canadians into a federal election. We have 3 provincial elections this fall. They're consequential. They elect provincial governments in Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, and British Columbia. It certainly means that a federal election is not realistically in the offing, at least for 2024.
What do you think of the NDP signaling a lack of support for the consumer carbon levy?
The No Discernible Principles Party, NDP.
Boom.
What do they stand for? How could they, and both David Eby as Premier of British Columbia and Pierre Poilievre, it's fine for Pierre Poilievre to say he doesn't listen to, excuse me, Freudian slip. It's fine for Jagmeet Singh to say he doesn't listen to Pierre Poilievre, but Pierre Poilievre's words come out Jagmeet Singh's mouth. So I shouldn't be as appalled as I am. Twice in the last year, Mike and I have voted in favor of carbon pricing when we've watched every NDP MP stand up and vote with Conservatives. That's already happened twice. But to announce that you're opposed to it, and again, this is a big problem for the NDP because they're merged federally, top-down, provincially. Greens aren't like that. Our parties we're provincial cousins across the country. We share the same values, but we don't operate top-down in that sense. But it's been clear that we could never see Mr. Singh speak out against the Trans Mountain Pipeline because it would have made the Alberta NDP angry. Mr. Singh won't speak out against a major source of greenhouse gases in fracking. Fracking releases a lot of methane. It's a powerful greenhouse gas, but as long as the BC NDP are boosting greenhouse gases through fracking, you won't hear the federal NDP speak out against it. So we look at actions of leaders of parties based on have they read the science? Does it seem that they are concerned about the climate crisis? When we go door to door, certainly in my community in British Columbia, climate comes up a lot. as a major concern. It may not be the flavor of the month in national polling. It doesn't mean that I don't hear every single day from Canadians who are very concerned that we're approaching tipping points in the atmosphere that threaten the survival of human civilization. These are not small stakes, and they should not be the kinds of issues where a person with a responsible position as leader of a federal political party should not be influenced by polling to such an extent that they abandon all principle. No discernible principles, Mr. Singh.
Wow.
Ooh. She even closes with it, and like that's
not a mic drop. That's a mic getting thrown at your face.
Literally, and it's like, and for those who are watching, you really need to tune in and see it because there's a couple of times that her facial expressions,
You mean
there's like
those
a little
listening?
pause right before she says something, and you see the facial expression. It's like what you hear dripping in her voice, you also see on her face just before she says it. Now, I wanted to pause here because there's two things that she mentioned. One, that Canadians weren't really all that interested, or that she wasn't interested in having an election right now, and neither are Canadians, actually, according to Ipsos polling. For polling that they have done, conducted between September 6th and 10th, released Wednesday, they surveyed Canadians' thoughts on the new political reality after the NDP withdrew from the supply and confidence agreement that ensured Liberals would remain into power into the fall. And Ipsos found that 56% of Canadians surveyed don't want that election just yet, saying they want all parties to try and work with the government on a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm.
So you got Pierre, who's in the lead in the polls, literally going, yelling, and screaming for something that even Canadians don't want. They're not receptive to his message.
Well, again, how many times have I said it? He does not want to govern. He only wants power. That's it. He won't even listen when they're telling him, no, people don't want an election. We're going to have one because I want it. That's not healthy. That's not democratic.
Exactly. Now, the only places in Canada where they do want the opposition to defeat the government at the earliest opportunity are Alberta and Saskatchewan, which explains why PP is doing that, because that's where his base is. But let's be honest, he's kind of got those locked up.
Yes.
You could put a potted plant with a blue sign, right? And there's a good chance that they'll win. So he doesn't need to do this to keep those seats. So he's actively choosing to piss off the rest of Canada that doesn't want an election right now by him calling for one at every single chance he gets. For him, he's going to there are 7 opposition days in this session, and you can bet that all the ones that belong to PP are going to have, let's have a motion of non-confidence and let's have a carbon tax election, when only Canadians in Alberta and Saskatchewan, which are the votes he already has locked up, would like that too. So he's going out there with a message that is going to, I'm thinking of an expression in France when you're petting a cat against the grain of the fur. That's only just going to irritate people and piss them off. Not sure what the strategy behind that is for him. So I don't know what he's doing. And one of the kits here had mentioned as well, with regard to Blanchet, that Blanchet was recently on record as saying some very, very nice things about Elizabeth May, that he really likes her and respects her. And both of them have the position that the subsidies to the oil sands need to stop, that the development really, we need to start moving away. So right now you have a situation where the Bloc Quebecois, the Liberals, and the Greens, which is an interesting type of coalition, because alliance, I should say, in this case, because coalition is fraught here, but coalition in the friendly sense, not in the political sense. Even though the Greens don't support, even though the Greens don't support the Liberals' environmental policy because they decided to buy and finish a pipeline to Tidewater.
He lost
Elizabeth
a lot of
May
capital with that too.
Oh yes, but Elizabeth May still knows, right, that the Liberal plan is better than the NDP's plan because they don't really have one. And the one that they presented in the last election got them laughed out of the room. And certainly know that Pierre Poilievre doesn't have a plan.
He's got nothing.
And even though Justin Trudeau is not going as far as she would like, he does seem to be somewhat committed to the bit. So, and Justin Trudeau is probably not going to reverse himself on one of his signature policies. So when it comes to maintaining carbon regulatory pricing, the Green Party, the Bloc Quebecois, and the Liberals form pretty much a unit on that one. So any opposition motion that Pierre is going to present that has anything with regard to carbon tax or climate, that's essentially a poison pill to make sure it doesn't happen. So does Pierre actually really want an election?
That's a good question.
Saying he wants one, but keeps on including something in his motion that guarantees he's not going to get one. Either the man can't read a room, is the embodiment of the definition of insanity because he keeps on trying the same thing and expecting a different result.
Well, he's a narcissist.
Especially when they've told him before he actually tries it that he's not going to get the result if he goes that way. Then does it anyway. Yes. Or he doesn't really want the election as much as he says he does. Just like he doesn't seem to want the foreign interference inquiry results as much as he claimed he did.
To be outside.
Because he wants the election before those come down.
Yeah. Well, he remember, we need to investigate Beijing for foreign interference. You mean the city, the capital city of the country of China? That Beijing? What about India and Russia? No, just Beijing.
Oh, they don't even want Beijing anymore because it's, as we're finding out more, as we are finding out more, it seems that, well, Miss May will be talking about it a little later. Let's continue.
1 second, please.
So do you agree with the Conservative leader that Mr. Singh is a sellout?
I do not agree with Pierre Poilievre's use of disrespectful slang and nasty nicknames. So I'm not going to go there. I think that Mr. Singh should be ashamed. And Mr. Eby as well. A carbon price is a necessary but insufficient response to the climate emergency. We need to take bigger measures, and as Mike in Motion 91, it's very clear that since Putin invaded Ukraine, the fossil fuel industry has benefited from essentially war profiteering, profits off the charts. We need to make a real decision as a country whether we're serious about climate or not. So I challenge Justin Trudeau. He announced in Paris in 2015, Canada is back. How is the Canada that Justin Trudeau brought back to global negotiations different from the Canada that was there under Stephen Harper? Canada's record remains the worst in the G7 for going in the wrong direction on climate action, increasing emissions when we should be decreasing. So I think I don't think he said the use of the term sellout is too close to Mr. Poilievre's quite unacceptable use of disrespectful nicknames. It's Trumpian, and I won't go there.
Good.
Yes, of course.
Elizabeth, just a brief point to add that where we agree with the NDP is the massive handouts to the oil and gas industry. They're making tens of billions of dollars in profits, and the federal government's still giving them $18 billion of our own money. As you heard from Elizabeth, we all spent $2,000 per household to expand the TMX pipeline in the midst of the climate crisis. So we agree more needs to be done to redirect those funds to regular Canadians. Where we vehemently disagree is that the reality is that the consumer carbon price continues to get more back to low-income Canadians than they pay. And that is true both when it comes to the rebate as compared to the bills of low-income folks who don't have a second cottage or a second car, but also with the minor inflationary effect of carbon pricing. Where we should be putting our time collectively is to call out that the carbon price went up 2 cents a litre last year, while the profits of the oil and gas industry went up 18 cents a litre. Shouldn't we all be united as progressives to be calling out that gouging and collectively putting pressure on the government to put in place a windfall profit tax as opposed to acquiescing to conservative talking points? That's certainly disappointing.
Really robust plan.
Got to give it to him on that one. Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. Let me get back. I'll bring it back in a sec. My apologies. I got to give it to him on that. Everything he just said, I completely agree with, and especially when it comes to, you know, corporate welfare for billion-dollar oil companies. I'm so sick of that. I'm so sick and tired of that. And friends of mine who have been lifelong conservatives, we're eye to eye on that one. Again, they're progressives, but they're like, stop giving welfare to billion-dollar corporations when we have people starving in the streets of our cities. Stop. Just stop. It was sink or swim on your own. I'm tired of paying for your bad business decisions.
Now, for kids who don't know, because she mentions a couple of times Premier David Eby when she speaks of the carbon issue. And the reason for which she is mentioning it is, and this is according to the National Observer, BC's NDP Premier David Eby drew fire from all political opponents after announcing he'll scrap the consumer carbon tax if Ottawa does the same. From the tax-supporting Greens to the stridently opposed BC Conservatives, all of the NDP rivals accused Eby of selling out his principles just before the fall provincial election. So his reversal, or not reversal, but adjustments on overdose prevention centers, which some of them needed to be done. There needed to be some adjustment. And now turning around and saying, well, we have a provincial election come up and I won't commit to removing the carbon tax, but if it does go federally, then we will make it go provincially. Seems like a total cave-in. And these seem like panic moves from the BC NDP. So I don't know what their internal polling is telling them, but it seems that this guy, David Eby, thinks that he needs to go way more progressive conservative than traditional NDP in order to make sure he wins this next election. But these are, let's put it this way. If Singh coming out and saying, well, the carbon tax, not all that for it, this is considering earth-shaking David Eby in British Columbia, saying, if it goes federally, we're ready to have it go too, is seismic in terms of a potential flip-flop here. Eby formally supported the carbon tax, even goes so far as to ridicule federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's appeal to join the fight against the climate measure as a baloney factory campaign tactic. The Conservatives seized on the tax backtrack, claiming victory for Eby's pivot, while Fousteneau, who's the leader of the Green Party in British Columbia, suggested it's, quote, clearer than ever that you can't trust the NDP on the environment. Eby's flip-flop is a cynical and desperate move because his campaign is losing ground, Rusted said in a press statement. Rusted, who's the leader of the BC Conservative Party that is now bolstered by the fact that BC United folded and joined it. Oddly enough, BC United has announced that they are still going to keep some candidates running in certain ridings to hopefully make sure that they get their 5% of the vote to get some of their money back. How's that for opportunistic?
Well,
now BC Conservatives have decided that there are a certain number of ridings in which they will recycle some BC United candidates to run for them there, but it's not going to be most of them. Clearly, it's going to be just a few of them. But it does seem that even though they're folding their operations because they spent some money, they're literally going to be eating from both ends of the table. Running candidates to try to get 5% so that they can have some of their costs, their funds, their expenses refunded by the taxpayer, while trying to gain some leverage in the party that they believe is going to form government by folding. It's so cynical.
I think these big oil companies need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Enough of my dollars going to them. When somebody will turn around and say, yeah, but we just spent billions on a battery factory for, well, we spent, so did the company. And did you notice that this is a cleaner energy? And let's not get into the debate on the minerals and resources used to extract the cobalt and the lithium to make the battery. I'm not going to get into that discussion. I know it's not good. I also know there's more lithium in Yellowknife than anywhere else on Earth. And so much so that you don't even have to mine it. It's right there on the surface. You can just go scrape it.
Indeed.
So, yeah.
So Sonia Furstenau, who I mentioned is the leader of the BC Green Party, says that rather than ditching the carbon tax, the NDP should make it fair and show how it could benefit residents and invest in the green transition. The province is making up climate policy on the fly and trading good policy for bad politics, she added. Quote, "We see a government that has consistently failed in terms of creating a vision, a plan, a clear stance, and action to get us unhooked from the fossil fuel industry, economy, and moving forward." So yeah, EB is taking a risk with the policy pivot, said Stuart Prest, a political scientist at the University of British Columbia. Whether it will serve him well in the election remains to be seen, Prest added. It might convince people the NDP is serious about affordability issues. However, voters may question the party's principles if the NDP continues to adopt conservative positions, as they have with carbon tax and drug decriminalization, Prest said. So that's pretty much what's going on there in British Columbia. It seems that the government is panicking over there. The Green campaign says this can potentially reinvigorate the Green campaign in a way that didn't seem possible a couple of days ago. And I think Miss May believes that as well, with the NDP sort of switch on there. Because I see some questions in the chat, and they are legitimate questions, asking like, for all the work that Elizabeth has done and for all the praise we're giving her, what has she actually accomplished? Well, I mean, she has accomplished a lot in the sense that she's made the environment a permanent issue. Now, not one that just can be ignored by having seats.
Let's not forget or ignore the fact that the Green Party is a progressive conservative party that gives a shit about the environment.
Exactly.
It's what they are. It's what they've always been.
And they've been successfully branded as radical left, but they really are a progressive conservative party.
That's all they've ever been.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that she has done is she has built a green movement all across Canada, and the Greens are stronger provincially, right? They've held the balance of power in certain provinces. They've held the balance of power in British Columbia prior to this government. I think it was Andrew Weaver was the party of the leader of the Greens then, but very, very respected, held the balance of power. And in certain provinces in Atlantic Canada, they held the balance of power at some time, or came very close to having it. We did have federally, we've had Green representation in certain provinces. There was a federal Green MP from New Brunswick at one point. Now, of course, there was a falling out with the party. Because, when Elizabeth May decided to step down, the party decided to go in another way and
that didn't
chose a leader that seemed to want to destroy the culture of the Green Party. And when Elizabeth May said that they are very much a horizontal party rather than a vertical party, she was coming in and really wanted to implement a top-down structure that was similar to all the other parties, and that was rejected.
Right.
And then there was the whole Israel-Palestine issue that came in and then blew up the party at the election when the Greens were the most poised to make a breakthrough because everybody was talking environment. And the leader of the party that came in basically squandered the opportunity by making herself the issue rather than the party's goals. So, and she came back. And the party is now back in the polls where about it was. At the time before she left. So she's managed to rebuild it. The other thing about the Greens, and we often don't look at this as having some value, but it does, is she has replaced the Jiminy Cricket. She's replaced the NDP as the Jiminy Cricket. So back in the day when we mostly had three parties, Ed Broadbent was often referred to as the conscience of the nation. She's the conscience of the nation.
Agreed.
If you want, if you're not in on the environmental bandwagon, that's one thing. But you could take what she has to say with a grain of salt one way or another, or saying that she's partisan when it's about her issue. Same thing as the Bloc when they talk about separatism or anything about Quebec sovereignty. But on all other issues, all other issues, you have no reason to at least not pay attention to what she's going to say. You're going to get the straight goods. And there's value in that. So the value of a party to a nation is not necessarily reflected only in the number of seats or the number of votes, but the quality of the work. And are they someone, I mean, she's highly respected by her peers.
Absolutely.
But there's a reason for that. It's the way that she does business.
Mhm.
So she sets an example, and that does matter, regardless of
forget.
how it translates into votes.
She's almost always the smartest person in the room, too.
Right.
I mean, come on, let's not kid ourselves.
Let's keep going.
1 second, sir. I bring it back.
And we'll take a question online. I have Mark Ramsey, Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Elizabeth and Mike, thanks for taking my question and hope you're both well. You mentioned that you're hearing from Canadians that they don't want an election this fall, and you think, politicians are looking at the polls and kind of deciding that way whether they want an election or not. For you guys, as far as I'm aware, you have about 18 candidates nominated for the next election. Do you think that you're ready for an election? Do you want an election?
Yes. A lot of candidates that have completed the nomination process is a poor measurement of our preparedness, because there are a large number of people who have other jobs, high-profile positions, and they don't announce their candidates till closer to writ period. I think there'd been a widespread expectation that we were sticking to something very close to the fixed election date period. So the preparedness that we have is I'm very confident that we'll win a lot more seats in 2025, which is when I think the next federal election will be, whether late fall, early fall, or late summer, we'll be ready. But thanks, Mark.
Can I add a
Yeah,
bit?
sure.
Yeah, Mark, I think also what you heard from Elizabeth is different folks might have different perspectives on who wants a Canadian or who wants an election, who doesn't. I think what you heard from Elizabeth, though, is that as Greens, we're coming in here to continue to be focused on actually advancing priorities of the people we represent, as opposed to a lot of the partisan theatrics that have increased and we expect will continue to increase. And so more than anything, it might be more difficult over the coming months to get things done in spite of all the posturing. But we are arriving here very much excited to continue to make progress on all that we heard from Canadians, both in my community and as you heard from Elizabeth across the country.
Thank you both. And as a follow-up, you mentioned the theatrics, and earlier you were talking about Pierre Poilievre's nicknames. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau the other day said on a podcast that Pierre Poilievre was a liar. Earlier today, House Leader Karina Gould called him a fraudster. What do you make of the Liberals' attacks there? Do you think that's appropriate?
I think it's pretty clear from my record as a parliamentarian that I've worked and will continue to work to elevate the discourse in our parliament. I think as a Canadian and honored to be a member of parliament, I embrace nothing as firmly as I embrace the notion that in Canada we can disagree without being disagreeable. I think that's critical. I think Canadians, I think at this point what Canadians expect of politicians is a pretty low bar. But we can do better. We can stick to facts. We can talk about evidence-based decision-making. And on the evidence, when you connect the dots, the climate crisis causes inflation, particularly foods where crops fail because of extreme weather events. Things actually cost more when they're hit hard by supply chain disruptions, such as we're still experiencing post-COVID, but particularly if you connect the dots, extreme weather events that mean that a particular region of the world is not producing the food at the same price it was when they weren't dealing with extreme drought and floods and so on. So we need to be focused and deliver for Canadians, and I don't think name-calling advances that.
Just one quick question, just to expand upon my colleague's question earlier about Mr. Singh's opposition to the carbon tax. How do you react to his assertion saying that he opposes the carbon tax because it's an undue burden on working people?
Again, I urge Mr. Singh to look at the evidence. That isn't backed up by the Parliamentary Budget Office. It isn't backed up by leading economists. I want to be very clear that the Green Party of Canada has called for what we call, with the different kinds of carbon taxes that are out there, we call carbon fee and dividend, which is there's a carbon price applied. It should be revenue neutral. In other words, the money received into a government from its carbon pricing should be used to reduce costs for Canadians, either through, in the original British Columbia carbon price, which was a reduction in our income tax, or through direct rebates, as the federal backstop now does. On the evidence, this is for, particularly for lower income Canadians, a net gain. So again, it's look at the facts, and then if you're going to say you're going to get rid of a central piece of basically the only thing the Liberals have done on climate, because they did say they were going to stop subsidizing fossil fuels. They've poured billions into the pockets of big oil in fake solutions like carbon capture and storage, and going in the wrong direction against the advice of the International Energy Agency and against the advice of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. This government has invested our public funds in expanding fossil fuel infrastructure, Trans Mountain Pipeline. I urge Mr. Singh, Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Poilievre, look at the evidence, and then if you're going to knock a particular strategy or policy, what's your alternative? And I never thought I'd be reminded of Donald Trump and something Jagmeet Singh says. But when he's grappling around and saying, well, we're going to give you a policy or a vision, we have a climate idea in mind, and Trump saying we're going to have the concepts of a plan, we haven't, Tim Walz, get your homework done. I'd say the same thing to all my colleagues who are leaders of other parties. Do your homework before you tell Canadians we're going to get rid of something because we have some vague idea. This is urgent. It's not like anybody in this country in a position of responsibility as a leader of a federal political party can pretend they don't know that we're in a planetary climate crisis with the potential to wipe out human civilization. This is not a prediction. This is not doomsaying. I have an obligation to say there's still time, there's hope, don't despair. But I hear from more Canadians who are despairing that it may be too late to preserve a future for their grandchildren than those who say, let's do nothing about it. I don't hear that. I don't hear anyone say, let's do nothing about it. I hear Canadians looking desperately for leadership and solutions. And fortunately, Greens have them. So in that sense, sort of almost can't wait for an election to put forward solutions. But I'd rather achieve them in a parliament that works than put them forward for another round of a very expensive federal election.
In the meantime, I think what we have happening with carbon pricing is we have a Liberal government that's been working cross purposes with itself for years, with carbon pricing that actually does work to reduce emissions while subsidizing the very industry most responsible for the crisis. Makes it pretty easy for the Conservatives to go ahead and then try to scapegoat the carbon price. And that's why it's particularly disappointing seeing the messages from the NDP of late. As Greens, we're going to just continue to try to stick to both what can make life more affordable for folks across the country and be serious about the urgency of the crisis that we're in.
Just on foreign interference, Ms. May, you have an opportunity this afternoon to make an intervention in NDP MP Jenny Kwan's privilege motion. Can you give us a sense of what you plan to say and how you plan to advance foreign interference this sitting?
Well, I don't know that I'll have an opportunity to give a speech, but I'll certainly have an opportunity to ask questions, so I'll be listening very closely. I think I will continue to maintain that every party leader in the Parliament should seek top secret security clearance. You don't get it as of right. And I would ask Mr. Poilievre, why are you not prepared to try to get top secret security clearance? What page is it in? This is the public version. I always make sure I've got the public version in front of me, having had the opportunity to read the non-redacted version. But we do know from page 32 of the public version of the Committee on Parliamentarians' National Security and Intelligence Report that there was foreign interference in the Conservative Party leadership race. If I were Mr. Poilievre, I'd want to know, am I beholden to a foreign government? What happened in the Conservative Party leadership race? That is something that I would ask Mr. Poilievre, and any uncertainty about the extent of foreign interference in your own party. Ask for your top secret security clearance. And I know from going through it myself, it's an arduous process, and you don't get it by right. And the people who are in control of basically our agencies that are part of the Five Eyes, we want our allies to know that we take it seriously, that we take intelligence and security seriously in this country, that we want to close those loopholes that create the soft places that make Canada a particular target for foreign interference, and that we want to make sure that all of us as federal political party leaders toughen up our own rules around nominations and leadership races.
Yes, please.
And again, it's in the unredacted public version that there was foreign interference in both India and in the Conservative Party of foreign actors from both the People's Republic of China and India in the Conservative Party of Canada leadership race. So Mr. Poilievre, I find his unwillingness to pursue that worrying. Thanks, Olivia.
Wow.
I told you, she just casually drops little bombs. Boom, boom.
That wasn't a
boom.
little one, dude. That was
No, that one
huge.
wasn't a little one. That was but very
That was
mindful
roasting.
and demure.
The way she just slid in there with that, she says there has been foreign interference from India and China in the Conservative Party leadership campaign. Why doesn't Skippy the Wonder Pigeon have his NSICOP clearance? Maybe he can't get it? Purely speculation. He keeps using the excuse of, well, they can just put top secret on anything, then I can't talk about it. No, it means you can't spin lies and bullshit. It's funny, the other leaders don't do that. Only he does. And now he is clearly implicated. This is getting to be very interesting, especially with all the news of Russian interference. And what I've noticed online, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but all these people coming out saying, oh, liberals are just trying to distract with this Russian interference. It's Russia, Russia, Russia season because, you've done something that I disagree with. No, it's Russia, Russia, Russia season because we all know, as if nobody knew, the Department of Justice indictment, which, by the way, the full version is now on our YouTube page. I was able to get the whole thing up. For some reason, it just was not loading correctly the first 2 times I tried.
Yeah, I know.
The entire show from start to finish is there now. If you want to go and watch it, where we read into the record the entire DOJ indictment, all 36 pages thereof. And yeah, there's a lot of things happening right now. There's a lot of balls in play. What is going to happen in the next couple of months? I don't know. As the inquiry gets underway, Pierre Poilievre wants to get an election as quickly as possible so that if he gets elected prime minister, if he gets elected, his party wins enough seats to form government and he assumes the position of prime minister, does he make the inquiry go away? Is he pulling a Trump move here, Right? Because Trump will pardon himself if he gets elected president because his sentencing isn't until after the election. So you wonder, is he going to make the whole thing just go away? Will Canadians accept that? Because this one won't. This one won't, and I don't think anybody watching or listening to this show will let that go either.
Right. Oh, man. And it seems that on that file, there's yet more news coming out of the United States with regard to Russian influences. I think that there was another indictment that came down a couple of days later with another group, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was something that came out of Europe as well that's circulating. And the one that came out of Europe was kind of interesting because it had lots of parallels with that which is going on in Canada. Just trying to find it here very quickly. It was Martin Lane who published it, who I believe works as an investigative journalist that I think is based in Estonia. Estonia is one of the 3 Baltic republics just on the other side of Ukraine that are really, really worried about what Vladimir Putin is doing down there because they pretty much assume that they are next. But from him on the European side, says leaked docs from a Kremlin-controlled propaganda machine reveal a campaign backing far-right parties in the EU elections and spreading disinformation to undermine Ukraine. Yes. And there's a lot of things that are pretty similar. It's a 15-post thread from him, but one of them that was really interesting here is, quote, "Our team fabricated a story about child abductions. Americans seriously published it," a Russian official wrote. "Russians exploit, quote, useful idiots and hide their tracks, knowing the West to distrust their outlets," citing U.S. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene as an example. The U.S. affidavit claims the SDA monitors 2,800 influencers from 81 countries, calling them, quote, opinion leaders. "We have small screenshot of this list in a leak. I'd call them useful idiots with their voices amplified by Russia, often without them even knowing." And this leak confirms what we see daily: Russian bot armies and paid trolls fueling conflicts and amplifying useful idiots who blindly spread narratives literally crafted by Kremlin officials. Often also using bot farms to do it. So there are some parallels there with what's going on. So yeah, as the United States gets more involved, and I heard last week, and I haven't heard much from it since, that the Department of Justice was going to be making public much more information about what it is they found out with this, and maybe some tactics and measures and stuff like that, and that it was going to come out this week at some point. But I have not heard when that is. But it seems that they are perfectly willing to make more of what they found out public than what's just in that indictment. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, kits and cubs. Mr. Grizzly, do we have a show?
I believe we do, sir. Yes. I think we should wrap up right there on that note so I can get some work done around the house and do some narration work that needs to be done so that I can, keep living here.
Good. All right, kits and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. If you would like to make sure you do not miss an episode, you do not have to, thanks to the Ray Girl. She sponsored our pod page. So if you go on down there, podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words, or scan that QR code that just appeared under my chin, that will bring you to our pod page. And if you click subscribe there, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. Now, if you would like to support us in other ways, you need to make your way down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page and make like Kit Elaine. And smash the buttons. We have like, share, and subscribe. Please click them. It makes us happy. It brings us joy. And hopefully, if you bring us joy, it brings you joy. Because we like everybody to be happy. So thank you for your support. And if you would like to support us in other ways, the QR code that's by Mr. Grizzly's head there will bring you to our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. And that's where you will find our tip jar. So if you like our product and want to encourage us to do more and would like to help us with the costs of running this operation, we would be very grateful for your support. Make whatever contribution you can. Every cent is appreciated. And if you are not able to make a contribution, do not worry whatsoever, because the gift of your attention and your participation are the ones that we appreciate the most. And we like to hear from you. So please write to us, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, our Twitter feed @TrueEager, Facebook, True North Eager Beaver, or if you are listening to us on YouTube, why not leave us a comment right here? We try to read everything, even though if we don't necessarily always respond, but we thank you for everything that, all the compliments, the constructive criticism, the story suggestions, avenues to explore, recipes, treats, all that good stuff. timeline cleanser videos of cute animals doing cute things. All of that stuff helps us get through the day, helps us prepare the show, puts us in good mood to make a good product for you, all of it. So we are very, very, very grateful for all that you do for us to help us along, because it's your show too, right, kids and cubs? Now, because democracy is something that you do. If you live in the LaSalle, Émard, Verdun region or Elmwood-Transcona, take a day off, especially if you voted. Take a day off. Now, if you live in the Bay of Quinte area in Ontario, you have a by-election coming up on the 19th provincially, so make sure that you get ready for there. And if you are in Ward 15, you've got 2 more days to put your name in if you want to run. And according to Kit Dan, apparently somebody did do that over the past yesterday or the day before. Somebody came in there's somebody that dropped out, and then there's somebody else that slid in at the last minute. And it seems that the person that slid in may be a higher profile candidate, if I understood correctly. Anthony Fury, by the way, is running in that one, who we talked about during the mayoral by-election. Very, very right-wingy and with interesting statements. A lot of people are suggesting, because, he's got the name recognition, that he would be a good candidate to win, but it seems that in Ward 15 specifically, not a lot of his votes came from that part of the city when he was running for mayor. So maybe it's not... maybe his name recognition is actually more of a weight against his hanging from his ankle. In
Millstone.
this case, millstone. That's it. I was thinking again in French, un boulet, but I couldn't think of it in the word in English. So we'll see what happens there. But that's the democracy is something that you do part. Remember when it's going to come time to vote. Friends don't let friends vote alone. We just saw
200
in Elmwood-Transcona.
50 something.
Yeah, a little strategic voting help there, and in the other one, such a close race that just a couple more people coming out could have swung the vote either to the NDP or to the Liberals. So there you go, kids. Your vote always counts, and I don't believe a vote for the NDP is a vote for the Poilievre and all that kind of stuff, or vote for NDPs, a vote for Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. Like, the vote you cast goes in the column of the party for which you cast the vote, and nobody else's. No matter what politicians try to tell you that your vote for one person means something, a vote for someone else or support for someone, don't believe that. It's not like there's some magic person that looks at, this is a vote for Jagmeet Singh. Well, let me just take that vote and put it in Justin Trudeau's box.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. Okay. So the vote you cast is for the party and the candidate for whom you cast it, and nobody else. Don't let them get away with that kind of stuff. All right. That's the democracy, something that you do portion. It could be a tough world out there, kids and cubs. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom?
Yeah, when your migraine starts to come on like gangbusters, get yourself into a dark room with a cold cloth on your forehead as quickly as possible, which is what I'm about to do, because I'm under a bunch of floodlights here and my head is starting to pound really hard. So it's time for me to go.
Ooh. All right. Then, Mr. Grizzly, please cue the cock. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.